Zelensky should come to the table.
But fair to say, Russia attacked unprovoked into Ukraine 3 years ago tomorrow.
Fair to say it's a very complicated situation.
After Trump called Zelensky a dictator, Zelensky strikes back. He says he's ready to step down, but on one condition. Take a listen.
Are you ready to resign as president if it means peace for Ukraine? Yes, I am. If it means peace for Ukraine. If you really need me to leave my post, I am ready, or I can exchange it for joining NATO. If there are such conditions, then immediately. I focus on the security of Ukraine today, not in 20 years. And I'm not going to be in power for 10 years.
As you guys know, ever since Zelensky said no to Trump's mineral deal, Trump has been constantly attacking Ukraine and President Zelensky, all the while becoming part of Russian propaganda. So today, Zelensky held a press conference where he answered all the questions that President Trump and the world media had for him. Now let's begin with Trump's comment from his speech at CPAC, where he once again repeated that the US has given Ukraine $350 billion in aid. Now, I don't know how President Trump came up with that number in the first place. He's been repeating this number ever since he took office, and never once has he provided any proof of it. On top of that, he said that Europe gives aid to Ukraine in the form of a loan, but the US gave them aid like it's free money. Take a listen to it yourself, and then we'll get into how Zelensky responded to President Trump.
I'm dealing with President Zelensky. I'm dealing with President Putin. I'm trying to get the money back that, or secured, because, you know, Europe has given $100 billion. The United States has given $350 billion because we had a stupid, incompetent president and administration. 350. But here's worse. Europe gave it in the form of a loan. They get their money back. We gave it in the form of nothing, so I want them to give us something for all of the money that we put up, and I'm going to try and get the war settled, and I'm going to try and get all that death ended. So we're asking for rare earth and oil, anything we can get.
After President Trump claimed that the US gave $350 billion as free money to Ukraine, the US Department of Defense came forward, calling out President Trump, saying that the US never gave that kind of money to Ukraine. Now imagine how embarrassing it is that the US Pentagon, a department under Trump's own administration, is straight up saying that the president is lying to his audience. Alright, here we have President Zelensky's reaction video, where he flat out says that the US never gave Ukraine $350 billion in aid. Take a listen.
Ukraine has received $100 billion from the United States, not 500 or 350, nor 250, nor 700, but only 100. And we are grateful for that. The amount of this war is now $320 billion, 120 Ukraine and Europe plus partners. For example, Japan with nearly $15 billion and 100 from the United States of America.
Anyways, coming back to the mineral deal, that started these attacks between Trump and Zelensky. So Trump is basically saying that they gave Ukraine lots of money and now we want their minerals in return. And that's why he wants Ukraine to sign the mineral deal, in which the US is demanding 50% of all of Ukraine's mineral wealth, which is, in my opinion, an absurd demand, considering that Ukraine has an estimated $23 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, and the US only gave them $100 billion in aid. Now we'll talk more in detail, but first let's look at the main points of the minerals deal contract that Trump wants Zelensky to sign. And really, I'm shocked with some of this stuff. This mineral deal has 5 major points. The first demand is that Ukraine pays 50% of its oil, gas, and mineral revenues to the US fund. The second point is that this 50% payment will keep going until the total amount reaches $500 billion. The third point says that the US will own 100% of this fund that Ukraine is going to contribute money to. Now, the first 3 points sound fair, but the problem starts from point number 4 on. The fourth point says that for every new dollar that the US sends to the Ukraine must pay back $2 into the US fund. So basically, Trump is asking for double the amount of whatever he sends to Ukraine in the future. And the worst part is that even if Zelensky agrees to this deal, the US would still not provide any security guarantees to Ukraine. Like, we won't be promising them anything at all. No protection against Russia, no weapons that can help them defend. Nothing like that is going to be promised by the US. So this last point is a deal breaker for Zelensky, and this is the only reason why Zelensky is refusing to sign the contract. Here's Zelensky explaining the situation himself.
I know that we had, and that's a fact. I'm not going to recognize 500, no matter what anyone says, no matter how we communicate. With all due respect to the partners, I am standing firm because this is a true situation. We are absolutely right. And the second situation, to be honest, even 100 billion, I am not ready to fix. Let me explain why. Because we should not recognize grants as debts. If you like it or not, I negotiated with Biden and negotiated with the Congress of the United States of America. I am grateful to the Congress.
Now, all the while this is happening, we've had many top-level members from the Trump administration going on live interviews, and some of the statements they've been giving are truly shocking. Like this one here from Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, where he was asked point blank, did Russia attack Ukraine in this war? And what he replied was shocking. Take a listen.
So standing here and saying, you're good, you're bad, you're a dictator, you're not a dictator, you invaded, you didn't, it's not useful, it's not productive. And so President Trump isn't getting drawn into that in unnecessary ways, and as a result, we're closer to peace today than ever before. And I've been privy to these conversations. Great progress is being made. Zelensky should come to the table because this economic partnership is an important thing for the future of his country, and we hope that he will very soon.
But fair to say, Russia attacked unprovoked into Ukraine 3 years ago tomorrow.
Fair to say it's a very complicated situation.
Okay, we'll leave it there. You have said previously that Putin is a maniac. You've called him a war criminal. How would you describe him today?
He's someone we're negotiating with to end a conflict. What I said as a private citizen has no bearing on what, as Secretary of Defense, my job is as far as the characterization of a regime.
Now, this very same Pete Hegseth used to call Putin a war criminal back in 2022. Take a listen.
When it comes to Ukraine, though, Harris, he's going to double down on the tactics he believes will bring civilians to their knees. You know why? He doesn't play by the rules of war. We call him a war criminal, and we do, and rightfully so. He doesn't care. Russia's not a signatory to the International Criminal Court. He doesn't feel any threat that he'll be held accountable. Ceasefires, you know what ceasefires are for him? An opportunity to reload, an opportunity to pick more targets.
Here, someone on Twitter pointed out that all these statements by the Trump administration kind of matched the statement of Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov during the G20 meeting, where he tried to convince the audience that it was Ukraine that started the war, not Russia. Take a listen to this.
You know, the war which we are trying to stop and which was launched against us using Ukrainian people, of course, it influenced the...
Anyways, moving on to another major development, President Emmanuel Macron was invited to the White House today. And during the press conference, President Trump once again started saying that Europe is giving money to Ukraine as a loan, while the US is giving it to them for free. And while he was saying all that, Macron cut him off and fact-checked Trump right there. Watch this.
Just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear. We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan, because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia will have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me.
Mr. President,
they get their money back, we don't, and now we do. But you know, that's only fair.
Now that was quite embarrassing for Trump. And right after this, Trump is asked point blank if he thinks Vladimir Putin is a dictator, to which he replies, "I don't use the word dictator lightly." Take a listen.
President called Zelensky a dictator. Would you use the same words regarding Putin?
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens. I think we have a chance of a really good settlement between various countries. And, you know, you're talking about Europe, and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also. So let's see how it all works out. It might work out. Look, you can never make up lives. The one thing you can make up the money, but you can't make up the lives.
So basically, Trump doesn't want to call Putin a dictator. He said, "I don't use the word dictator lightly." But just recently, only a couple nights earlier in fact, he called Zelensky a dictator. Take a listen.
He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, yes, sir, to say that he's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
And here's another clip of Macron where he says he wants Ukraine compensated first before anybody else. Take a listen.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated because they are the one to have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by these attacks. Second, all of those who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.